So there are only two people that have their own dedicated wings for shoe production at Nike: six-time NBA champion, worldwide superstar Michael Jordan, and pro skater Stefan Janoski. I think Nike killed their golden goose with this one, and I have a secret Nike insider that gave me the dirt on everything. Stefan Janoski is a pro skater. He went pro for Habitat in 2002. He makes super hard tricks look absolutely effortless. He's just like a laid-back, goofy dude. He's so good, he had multiple shoe deals lined up even before he went pro, but one of the most notable moves was that he had a pro shoe lined up, designed, ready to come out for Etnies. But right before the shoe came out, he got cold feet and quit Etnies. So his shoe model got renamed the Faction, which became one of the best-selling shoes of all time for Etnies. And the Etnies team was like, dude, this guy blew it. Like, he missed his chance with this great shoe. I can't believe he quit. So in 2006, Stefan got a Nike after floating around S and Lakai, but he was told that another team rider and one of the most notable skaters of all time ever, Paul Rodriguez, or P-Rod, was getting the only pro model at the time, and he was like, all right, that's chill, whatever. A couple years later, and after a few more of Stefan's parts came out, Nike approached Stefan and was like, let's make a pro shoe. This is where the story gets really interesting. So an inside source at Nike told me there was a lack of communication somewhere along the line of designing the shoe. So typically when a new shoe is made, they make a sample, they'll present it to the pro, and then they'll go back and forth like 4 to 5 times and settle on the final product. It's what we do with our collabs. It's pretty much what everybody does with like a pro or signature shoe. In this case, the shoe had gotten to the point where they had made samples. The samples they made had passed. So Nike had sent out the shoes to the global sales team and started showing them to skate shops and like started selling the shoes. The process had made it so far that the skate shops had placed orders for these shoes, and then Janoski ended up seeing it and was like, I don't like that shoe. I hate that shoe. I'm not wearing that shoe. That's not my shoe. So the designers had even developed a new outsole, which would cost tens of thousands of dollars for the molds and development, all to have it canned. And these projects are all done like months ahead. So to pull something that you were about to sell for this season puts you back at least 9 months. So you're losing money and time. If this was anyone but Nike, that probably would have driven them out of business or like severely impacted them, but luckily it was Nike. So Stefan has been quoted saying he wanted his shoes so thin and so low that my ankles bleed when I do switch flips, which is a pretty big departure for the time. Stefan didn't like doing tricks and like big chunky cup sole tech around his foot. He wanted his shoe to be his foot. He didn't want anything on it. Performance over protection, he said. So finally Stefan had some sort of rendering of his shoe and he took it to Nike and he said, this is what I want. Please make a prototype of this. And Nike eventually caved. They're like, fine. Everybody was skeptical of the new design. It was a vulcanized shoe with no tech, which is not what Nike was doing. My Nike source even said that skate shops were super tentative to carry a Vans looking Nike shoe and didn't have faith in it. So some shops ordered as few as 4 pairs for the whole shop. My Nike source said that the second season of shoes would be ordered before the first season had even arrived in person because they're 9 months ahead. So not many shops opted on a lot even in the second season. So when the shoes finally started arriving, they got bought up immediately in the shops. So they're like, oh shoot, let's order more for the next season. And then those would get bought up immediately, and so on and so forth. Then all of the Nike team riders started wearing Janoskis in their parts and contests, and they just started wearing them. So then all of the kids at skate parks started wearing Janoskis. Everyone skating, it was like, the Janoskis are the best shoe we've ever skated. Like, this is crazy. So Nike started to see they had cash cow, they got dollar signs in their eyes, and sales really started popping off. So the management at Nike saw the popularity tearing through the skate world and decided to open up sales to bigger brand stores like Foot Locker. This increased sales a lot. Soon the Janoski was literally everywhere. Like, the grip this shoe had when I was in high school was crazy. Everybody had a Janoski. So the Janoski was making hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every single year for Nike. It made up more than half of all Nike SB revenue combined. Just a small royalty percentage on each shoe sold. This made Janoski possibly the most successful skater of all time, just based on shoe sales. But to borrow a quote, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long, and you have burned so very, very brightly. Because literally everybody had the shoe, it starts to lose its coolness. People don't want to wear the same shoe as everyone else, especially if you're in a niche like skating where it's like style's everything. There's a chart of innovation that shows adoption percent against market share. I'll put it up here, somewhere in here, you can see it. The more popular something gets, the faster that chart moves. You can search for Google Trends on this and you can see the huge spike it had. And like around 2016, literally everywhere. After 2016, Janoski sales tanked like pretty hard. Like in 2019, when I was working at a skate shop, they always ended up on the sale rack. Like no one wanted them. And going from hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue to zero is like a pretty nasty thing. So eventually Nike shut down production to add some like scarcity, try and make the shoe popular again. No shoes produced. Shutdown ended up lasting for about a year and a half. So what's really interesting about this is my inside source told me that since people move around a lot in Nike, the manager of a division like SB would come in and only be there for a couple years. So if their boss saw they had a ton of sales and were growing, they would get a huge promotion and move out of SB and not just be really invested in the long-term plan. But now you have a pro who has a minimum royalty guarantee where you have to pay, and it's probably a pretty large sum of money because this guy was making you hundreds of millions of dollars. So he probably negotiated a pretty good safety net above his royalty guarantees. But there are no shoe sales of his to help cover that payment, which means that Nike has to find that money somewhere in the SB wing, which means other younger skaters in their prime, they're either gonna get cut or not given their chance because there's no money for them, or they're gonna have to do internal layoffs. But recently the Janoski re-released after being on product shutdown, and Nike has been trying to revive the Janoski, but the sales have just not been the same. You can look at the Google Trends charts, you can see it just has not picked up. I picked these up from my local skate shop and they were already on the sale rack. I was asking the guys, I was like, are these selling? They're like, it's popular, but there's other Nike stuff that's selling better. So after all of that, after Nike had found their golden goose and effectively killed it by running up the sales too fast, how does it even skate? Is it really that good, or is it just popular? And are the materials any good, or is it just Nike quality? I'm just curious about the shoe as a whole because it was literally everywhere and then it's gone. So it's like, ooh, are the myths true about this scary shoe? Keen Ramps was nice enough to send us a bunch of stuff to skate for these videos. They usually ship to you in these little IKEA packages and you put them all together yourself. I really like this kind of stuff because you can set up your own little skate park wherever you want, in your driveway, in an empty lot somewhere. Honestly, we have a tiny little spot in our new shop that I've been using as a skate park, and it's perfect because you can just move all these little obstacles around. So they have tons of different stuff, but they sent us their 6-foot round rail, their puzzle wedge, and I requested the slapstick. So we have a bunch of people that want to learn how to skate, and this is a tiny obstacle that people can learn to get the feeling of rolling over bumps, getting on coping, and just kind of learning. I really liked hopping on it to help the feel of getting on a rail and learning how to lock in better, with a cross lock and heel lock. And I really like the rail because it comes with the pads on the feet to help it stay stable, it keeps it grippy on every surface. So it has 3 heights, and I was trying my best to finally get 50/50s on a rail with the lowest height, and I promise you I will get them eventually, and it will be because of this rail, because it can go so low. And the wedge kicker is super sick because you can take it anywhere to improve a spot. So I skated this one the least because every time I wanted to take it somewhere, it rained or snowed because it's winter in Utah, and every time I wanted to skate, it ended up storming, and it really made me mad. So they did hook us up with some discount codes for our audience, so you can use the code 20ANVIL for $20 off a purchase of $200, or 60ANVIL for $60 off a purchase of $500. So go grab some for yourself, let me know how they work for you, let me know which ones we should get, or anything you want us to do. So I'll put the links below somewhere. So thank you, Keen Ramps, I really appreciate it, super fun to skate them. The brand is Nike SB, the style is the Zoom Janoski OG Plus. They weigh 12.7 ounces, which is under 1 pound, which is super light, so there's not really, already you can see there's not much in the shoe because it's just so light. Price, it's $95, I believe it retailed for around $78 when it came out in 2009. They're made in Indonesia, and the positioning, they say, coming in hot after a year of R&R, research, and redesign, the Janoski continues the journey of Stefan's signature skateboarding line. Skate-specific tread helps deliver the great board feel and flick. A re-engineered upper helps you give better fit and comfort, opening the door for next-level performance. If you want these shoes, you can check them out in our links below, sometimes it helps us. So, going to the upper. So the upper is a suede leather. Suede is pretty standard for skate shoes. The pros are, it's cheap, number one for Nike. It's pretty durable for what it is, and it's really grippy because all of these suede hairs. But its cons are, it's usually pretty dang thin, and it's definitely not as quality or long-lasting as full-grain leather. We did the burn test, and it just burns like normal leather. There's not crazy Nike finishes on it. It just shrinks a little bit because it's so thin. So we measured the thickness. It only comes in at 1.5 millimeters, which is pretty thin, but it's average for sneakers like this, especially in skate shoes, and especially for big brands like Nike. If you zoom into the grain, so usually leather is this whole cross-section right here, and there's a tight grain structure that keeps this all together. So in this one, there's no grain at all, so there's nothing holding it together. It's all just loose fibers. Some suede you can even pull apart with your hands. So it's always backed by something. So this is probably backed by some sort of canvas or the liner or something. We ran the puncture test on it though, and it punctured at 130 pounds, which is pretty good for such thin leather. And this shoe also came with 2 sets of laces. So there's one regular set of laces in here, and it came with 1 set of leather laces. So I tried out the leather laces first, since I've never had them for skating. We see leather laces in the work boot world a ton, since they're pretty flame resistant and really durable. But the leather laces weren't really the best quality on these. They snapped pretty quick. I was tightening them up on the skate park one day and they just pulled apart. So I switched back to the normal laces and they've held up fine. You can see this shape is also pretty pointy, which I think it helps the flick a lot by being so pointy. It's a little long for me, honestly. Stefan's want of having a no protection shoe was definitely right on the money, because these shoes offer no ankle protection. They're so low, they'll come below your ankle, and there's no foam or anything really in there to protect your ankle. He said he wanted his ankles to bleed when he did switch flips. Mission accomplished, because my ankles were bleeding after I skated these. So for the leather itself, I was pretty impressed. It didn't go through at all anywhere. The only place that that got kicked through was the little stitching on the side because there's only one row of stitching there. So it busted through like the first time I skated, but it didn't affect the skating at all. And the leather itself held up really well. It didn't break in too much either, like it didn't get too soggy. Sometimes shoes break in way too much, like those last resorts. But my feet did get pretty hammered and the shoes left like these crazy marks on top of them after skating. I'll put pictures up here. You know, my toes are on the internet for free, so if you want to send me some money, I'm totally okay with that. They're upper at all. Just a little low cut and pretty pointy. So keep that in mind for when you're skating them. But at the heel counter area where you get the most wear and tear on shoes, where things always go through, it looks like they just have like knit material there, which seems like the worst thing you can put for a heel where it needs to be really durable. Knit doesn't seem like durable at all. For $95 from Nike, I think a small patch of suede would have been doable and made the shoe way more durable. But if we go to where the Zoom part of the name Zoom Janoski comes in, we take out the insole, just like the other SB Dunks and Blazers we've seen, the Zoom is just a small packet of air on the heel. You can definitely feel it way more in this shoe than in other Nike Zoom stuff I have worn. Maybe it's just because the shoe is so much tighter than the other ones. You can like, oh, there's a bubble on my heel. I can actually feel it. So we ran the ball drop test on this and it bounced up 22 inches, which is tied for number 5 overall, which is really good. But we've seen Nike Air Packets. They're pretty much the most responsive things that we have ever tested. I think it works for its intended purpose of adding a little bit of squish to the heel, but honestly, it's nothing to write home about. Like, it's nothing crazy. It's just a little tiny bit. You can feel it on your heel, but I don't think it's like the maker or breaker of the shoe. But what is interesting is this comes with 2 sets of insoles, and one of the sets of insoles has cork on the top. We see these a ton in the work boot world because cork breaks in very nicely to the shape of your foot. Like, they use it as midsoles and like Red Wings and all the really nice heritage boots. It's supposed to conform to the shape of your foot really well. But usually in this case, when the cork is just so thin, it doesn't really add anything. It's usually just like a marketing shtick to be like, yeah, we have cork on our insoles, and it's like less than a millimeter thin, like on this one. But you can see on these ones that my footprint is in there pretty solidly. So foam will definitely break into your foot shape eventually, but I think the cork on top helps it just like keep its shape. Instead of like compressing down every single time, it'll be like, oh, here's the main shape that your foot's gonna go in, and then the foam will compress down on top of that. I've been a big hater on these because I always equate cork sheet insoles to, you know, marketing gimmicks. But in this case, I think it actually does work for what it's supposed to. So maybe in skate shoes, the cork sheet is the move. And there's no midsole in here because vulcanized shoes usually just use the outsole, and like the insole is all the cushioning you have. So if we go to the outsole, it's a vulcanized rubber outsole. So the pros of Volk over Cupsole are they're grippier right off the bat. There's a lot more board feel. They're way cheaper to produce, but they're much less durable than most Cupsoles. I can go through a vulcanized outsole in like 2 weeks if I'm skating every day. We put the durometer on it. It comes in at 55 shore. It's pretty soft. The lower that number is, the grippier but less durable the outsole is going to be. Then we ran the puncture test on it, and it ran through at 93 pounds, which is, it's slightly higher than average for sneakers. It's about average for the skate shoes we've done. The biggest failing of Volk is how fast you can go through the outsole. So it held up pretty decently until at the very end, right when I was about to cut it in half, I did 50 kickflips in a row, and you can see on the toe right where it starts to bust down. Oh, bust down. Right where it starts to break down. But it held up better than every other Volk I've skated so far. Like the Carrium I skated blasted through in a couple of sessions. The New Balance 306 and half cab, they started coming apart at the bottom after a couple weeks. So props where props are due to Nike, because this one held up way better than the rest of them. So that's everything we can see from the outside. So let's get this cut in half and see what we can see from the inside, see if there's anything special in here that makes it everyone's favorite skate shoe or made it so popular. Because the outside is just kind of looking like a basic vulcanized shoe right now. So let's chop this thing in half. Okay, so we got it cut in half, and that was probably my best cut so far. I see all your comments about how bad I am with the knife, and I get it. I'm pretty bad with that knife. I'm still learning. So make sure, subscribe and comment. It helps us afford the 2 to 3 shoes a week we cut apart to show you what you're spending your hard-earned money on. So let's see what's inside. So really, there's nothing surprising in here. We found the lining is just a weird knit material and the heel counter is just a flipped version. So I don't know, it's just weird. It's weird that it's trying to be like nubuck or felt or something. It feels very strange. Weird choice for a lining, but it didn't really affect me in any way. So you can see that there's nothing in this shoe for like midsole or anything. It's just the rubber columned outsole right here for the squish, and it relies a lot on this insole because there's nothing there. The columned insole is actually popularized by Dr. Martens. It's like their bouncing airwear soles is just a columned outsole. The outsole, you can see it's 3 millimeters thick right here. It's about average for a vulcanized shoe. The thicker the rubber, the less board feel you get. As a whole, for a skate shoe, is this the best skate shoe of all time? Is this why it was so popular? Like, it didn't break in too much. It didn't get too soggy. It had really good flick. I felt very comfortable skating on it. But on the flip side of that, it does hurt your feet. Like, the lack of ankle protection hurts. And my feet got battered while I was skating them. Check out my OnlyFans, onlysamsfeet.com. So it's definitely performance way over protection, which is exactly what Janoski wanted. So it skates really well. Like, I like the shoe, but it does hurt. So I think this shoe came out at the perfect time when people were getting really tired of the same old techie cup soles and the market was just kind of bare of Volks. And then the Janoski came along and filled that niche perfectly at the perfect time. So it's a kind of right time, right place. It's not the most extraordinary skate shoe. It's not the best skate shoe I've ever skated, but I think, you know, it's a really good Volk and it came out at the perfect time. So is it worth $95, which is pretty steep for a vulcanized shoe? I called the Last Resort shoes pretty expensive and they're the same price. So there's nothing in the shoe that points to its materials being that much better than anything else. I think a lot of the price comes in with the 2 sets of insoles they send you with and the 2 sets of laces. They build that into the price and they build in the royalty from a pro shoe. So I'm okay with pro shoes being a little bit more expensive to like help the pros out, like especially if you like the pros, buy their stuff and help pay them. But I think this one is just a little expensive for what it is. I think the overall takeaway from this whole shoe can teach us a lot of big life lessons. So I think Nike got way too greedy with these shoes. I think someone in middle management wanted a fat promotion, so they pushed really hard to get these shoes everywhere. And I think they might be dead for a while. The whole video is like a lesson in sustainable growth. Like if you overexploit something too fast, then it goes away forever and will never come back. It's kind of like if you have a big delicious cake. I'm gonna make a cake analogy, and you have a whole slice. You're like, oh man, this is really good. So now you can either A, eat the whole cake and feel horrible and like feel bloated, and then there's no more cake left ever. Or you can, you know, cut individual slices and parse that cake out over a while. It's like, oh, but I have this delicious thing that I can keep going back to over and over and over and over again if I just, you know, don't eat it all in one sitting. Hopefully that made sense. I think Nike, you know, they killed a golden goose with this one. So if you've skated Janoskis, let me know what you think. Like, send me some clips, send whatever you want. I'm really interested to see how everyone else feels about the Janoski. If I'm wrong about anything, let me know. I'm probably gonna start posting some extra content on my own channels that won't fit in the video. It's like not like meant for the video. It's just too long and wouldn't make sense. Let me know what you guys want to see, and yeah, like, comment, subscribe, etc. Do the YouTube thing. Keep me employed. Keep the editor employed. It's very important that we have jobs in times like these. So that's it. See ya.